How's it going, YouTube? I'm back now with part 2 of our Heads Up Hyper mini series. Part 1 we looked at $1.50 Heads Up Hypers. This time we're looking at $3.50 Heads Ups. Let's jump in. So looking at the lobby, these are also micro limit. You'll find the $1.50s and $3.50s on the micro limit. You can still for the Hold'em versions open sit, which again I would highly recommend doing. So that's what we're going to do. Let me get the open seating in. Make sure you're playing no limit rather than pot limit Omaha, unless you want to be playing that, of course. There should be games for Omaha running at this stake. Anyway, like I said in the first video, if you haven't checked that out, there should be a link in the description. But like I said in that one, open sitting is the most important thing that you do if you're grinding these games, because the recreational players will come on and they'll want to play a game immediately. They're not going to open sit themselves, they're going to sit on your tables. Whereas the people who are looking to make money are often the ones that are open sitting themselves. They're willing to wait for those types of opponents. So if you can do that, do it. Very first hand, we've got an interesting spot because Queen High on Ace High board. Considering how wide range-wise both of us have to play, we still have showdown value with this Queen High. So I don't want to fold the flop yet. I think on the turn I can give it up, but even then there could be some merit to calling on the turn as well, especially if you've got an opponent that you know if they'd hit an ace would check it back on the flop. As soon as you know an opponent's like that, you can definitely make some wide hero calls. This queen free's quite a tough spot here. I'm going to fold, but raising here and calling might both be options. I just don't like playing out of position in a spot where I can only hit slightly mediocre hands. Oops. All right. King 9. Okay, we got a open-ended straight draw. I'm thinking about leading out this. I think I will lead out, and I'll lead out for a nice size. Trying to take it down now if I could. 7 on the turn isn't great because it's very unlikely that I would have bet out with the 7. We have a bit of showdown value with King High, but not much. We've got the straight draw as well, so we're definitely not folding. And on the river, we're fingers crossing that our opponent had a draw that missed, but they didn't. That's a shame. So they did bet the turn with an 8. It's useful to know. I wouldn't make a note though unless you're playing this person a lot or they're constantly rematching you. Doing an awful lot of limping at the moment. I'm not going to be floating too often against these very large raise sizes. Generally, I'd only want to float, so calling without actually having a hand, if the odds I'm given are very good. We're getting butchered so far in this game, which obviously isn't great. But yeah, the overall variance in these games is so much less than spin and goes. Even though the games are probably overall slightly tougher, the reason there's a lot less variance is rather than having to win 1 in 3 times, you now only have to win 1 in 2 times. And then on top of that, you don't have a multiplier telling you how much you're playing for, where most of the time you're either playing for 2 or 3 times the buy-in. In this, it's always the same amount. You will also find that the rake is lower, which is another nice benefit, I have to say. Okay, 4-7. Gonna check it back and give up. I'm doing a lot of giving up at the moment, but I can't really represent much on boards like this when I was limped to. They make very, very large ISO sizings. You might occasionally find people who make those sizings, and then when you shovel them, they fold. You definitely want to make a mark on those people because they clearly just don't understand the odds they've given themselves. Jack free should be very borderline for shoving. Because of what I saw earlier on the $1.50 game, where people were folding a lot at this stack depth, I decided to go for the shove. Never expecting an ace to fold, but there we go. He did want a rematch, so let's go again. Let's try again. Yeah, so all of those borderline spots with push or fold in Nash equilibrium on that chart, I think it's better to go for a shove on those borderline spots because they're overfolding. I don't think the players are calling anywhere near what they're meant to. So I think it's a good idea. With the twos, I'm definitely limping because when our opponent raised last time, they made it 4 big blinds. If they ever limp, if I ever limp and they raise 4 big blinds and then I shove and they fold, this is a really good spot of picking up some dead chips. So I like limp trapping there with the deuces. Anyway, checking it all the way down. Managed to take this pot, which is cool. King 6. Flop top pair in a spot where I could play it however I want. My opponent's been fairly aggressive, so I could go for a check call. I think I'll do that. Check raising is also completely fine, completely valid. Does need a little bit of protection. This board hasn't been the best run out, but it's also not been the worst. When he checks back the turn, he could have a jack, a 7 or a 10, or just be giving up. I think if he had a jack or a 10, he would be tempted to bet the river, so I decided to go for a check. If he made a small bet, I would check raise with my king, but because he snap bet pot size, I think it's time to just keep the pot small. Well, control the size of the pot, just call. He bet 9-2. I have absolutely no idea what the intention of that bet was. Is it a bluff? Is it really thin value? Honestly, I have zero clue. I would probably make the note that they're a button clicker because it makes no sense to me at all. Zero cents. Anyway, ace jack, we check all the way to the river and gonna call a pot size bet. Find out they're bluffing. And now ace 7, easy call against ace 5. Hit the 7. Take it down. Very nice. Should we do one more? See if we can end up on him. So yeah, that's a really cool feature is the rematch thing. You can end up getting in very, very long rematch sessions against players. I've definitely had a few in my time when I was playing these professionally. I actually quite preferred these to spin and goes because of that feature, because you get to play the same person repeatedly. I really like learning about my opponents and changing my game and exploiting them. When it comes to heads up hypers, as soon as you're playing like medium or high stakes, that becomes less of an issue. But if you're able to be open sitting and you're getting mostly recreational players, you can find ways to exploit them far better than if you were trying to play like GTO. You can get some really good win rates on them. Like you can hit 7, 8, 9, even 10% ROI in the games if you're constantly getting these recreational types. So I check back the flop. They bet quite big on the turn and now shove the river. No way I want to be calling this one. Just king high. I think I'll leave that. This one could be dangerous. I'll keep the pot small, I think. Another hand that you could check raise, but I think playing it like this is better. And then last time he just bet randomly with 9-2, so maybe we should just check to them. Maybe that is something we should be doing. If they're just going to click some buttons, I think it's worth doing. So he had 4-8 here. He clearly decided that 4-8 had showdown value. He wasn't bluffing. So that means the 9-2 he decided to bluff the 9-2. So we're really starting to get a picture in our mind's eye of what he considers value, what he considers bluffs. And now we can start exploiting that a little bit. So we're going to call the turn. I'm hoping for no pot mash river. Cool, he checks it. I'm not going to try and get a 9 or a 10 to fold. I think that's a bad idea. We're either ahead or behind. King Queen against the shove. I'm going to call. It's gamble time. I don't really want to be folding a hand as strong as this. Even if we do have some... even if we are in a spot where I feel like our opponent is playing a lot worse than us post-flop, it's just a very, very strong hand, and I'm flipping against a pair. Every now and again on these heads-up hypers, you're going to find someone just shoving a suited connector or just a random like King 8 offsuit, things like this. So I think it's worth calling with the strong hands, even though often you're going to find yourself in a flipping situation. Just because you will find those what the fuck hands against these players who clearly don't play seriously. Anyway, unfortunately in our 3-game match our opponent won 2, we only won 1, but I'm fairly happy with the play. As we just saw, we can open sit in these without too much hassle. The next video we'll be looking at the $7 games where open sitting might be a little bit harder, but I know it is possible, so we'll look at that and go from there, I think. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. If you want to look at some pre-flop ranges, pre-flop plans, give a look down in the description. It's free to use. If you want to be looking and learning and learning to win at these games and really studying, I would suggest checking out our Spin and Go course. You can find it over on our website, op.poker.com. And it's got a whole section for heads up and heads up hypers, really specifically looking at 25 big blinds all the way down to push or fold stacks. It talks about how to play in these spots, because this is not just an important part of heads up hypers, it's of course important for Spin and Goes as well. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.